will be joining our parent council starting in January, which is really super exciting. And then those same three parents, along with two other local partners, are going to be doing some empathy listening with families over the next 2.5 months, basically. It's part of a regional system assessment, but also it's blended into a whole bunch of other stuff that we're doing. And we're hoping to reach between 30 and 40 families through our empathy listening because we have so many local partners engaged in it. And I'm really excited about that. So
that's amazing. I also love that it's empathy listening. It's not just listening, but there's something that feels very supportive about that. So I love that. Thanks for sharing that. Anyone else?
This is Dana here with Preschool Promise. Just a shout out to all of you. Like, we had a request for like number of open slots across the state with Preschool Promise, and may you all like deliver like within less than 24 hours. I really appreciate that. We'll be doing some follow-up on that, but kudos to all of you because I know that you guys are all like super busy. So just getting that so fast was amazing. So thank you.
Yeah, definitely want to second that. That was a really incredible ask of all of you, and it was so quick. Anybody else? This is one of my favorite parts. I love this part of the meeting. Nope. Okay. I know we don't have any updates from Christopher Brown, so I am going to hand it over to Cass and the OSU team now.
Great. I am looking through my screen to see if Shauna is on the call. No, I see Brenda and Amanda though. A few months ago, we had Brenda and Amanda come on from OPEC. So I know that many of you have had opportunities to meet with them individually as well. So if you would like, without further ado, is Brenda or Amanda leading this today, or both of you, or how do you want to do this?
I know that Shauna was planning on being here, so I hope she'll show up. But I think we can go ahead and get started, Amanda. Do you want me to show our presentation, Amanda? Would that work?
Yes, please, Brenda, if you have the presentation on hand. It's gonna be wonderful. We can share the presentation. We have can we be co-host? Yes, okay. Well, I can start. Hello all. My name is Amanda Cassian. My pronouns is she, her, ella. I recently joined the OPEC team as outreach coordinator with focus on parent leadership. As we all know, families are their children's first and most important teachers. OPEC team at Oregon State University, we are working to provide technical assistance and support for early learning and OPEC Hub staff, as well as participating families. It's an honor to provide an overview for our current development work. And we can go to the next slide, Brenda, please. We are working on 2 guidebooks, Parent Family Leadership Council Guidebook for Early Learning Hub and OPEC Hubs. And coming soon, Parent and Family Leadership Guidebook for Families. Each of these guidebooks are in progress and will continually grow as we find and create additional resources to support hubs and participating families in this meaningful work. And we will share the link to this draft in the chat if in a moment, but Brenda, if you can be able to click on the link for just to share what is this guidebook looks like in the no. Well, let me explain you how this guidebook contains information and resources created to support parent leaders. Some examples you will find in the link on page number 10, resource toolkit with information about how to create flyers for parent and family leadership councils, how to create an agenda, how to create welcome environments and elevating parent voices. What is Parent Cafe? Also recruitment information with full access to download and view examples for other hubs and much more. At OPEC, we also have a Connect and Learn group and coaching and connections. For Connect and Learn groups, it's a learning community for early learning hubs and OPEC hubs, supporting parent and family leadership council and parent advisories around the state of Oregon and Siskiyou County, California. And for coaching and connections in our team, we all eager to connect with you to learn more about your parent and family leadership efforts, success, challenge, and needs. All of your comments, questions, and observations help us to know and understand the needs and challenge. Our approach to support family leadership is relationship focused and community inspired. Please get in touch with us to learn more. And now, Brenda Ulloa will help us with more information about our learning experience in our first Connect and Learn that we have with the fall cohort, and exciting news for our winter cohort. Thank you all. Please go ahead, Brenda.
Awesome. Thank you, Amanda. And I apologize. I know we went through that handbook really quickly, but like Amanda said, we will share that link for you all to be able to take a peek at all that we are working on there. It is a work in progress, but hopefully that will be up and running here pretty soon for you all. So yeah, our Connect and Learn, we had the opportunity to do a fall cohort, which was great. We had 13 participants, both OPEC and Early Learning Division hubs were in representation there. The way that we composed these Connect and Learns were 90 minutes, where Amanda and I had a topic that we would bring, such as building trust, effective communication, virtual and in-person effective group discussion formats. And then after probably about 45 to 60-ish minutes or so, then we would open it up to the group to have conversations, do brainstorming, share resources, anything that anyone was needing support or just community building. A lot of our participants really enjoyed just being able to connect with others who were doing similar work that they all were doing. So it was a lot of fun to get to know those 13 participants. And with that, we are excited to continue our Connect and Learn with our winter cohort that will be starting in January. We still are working on the topics that we will be having, but we will be meeting January, February, and March. So it is a cohort of 3 sessions. And this will be for anyone in the state of Oregon and Siskiyou County, either OPEC and or Early Learning Hubs or any partner organizations as well. And we will have registration information coming out soon. We're hoping by the end of this week. And we do have a deadline to register by the 30th of December. Anything else, Amanda?
Just an open invitation to all to join the winter cohort. It's open for all, and please join us.
Brenda and Amanda, I'm sorry if I missed it, but is there an email or a flyer or something coming from you that leaders could send out to their partners, inviting them to join that cohort?
Yeah,
Thank you so much for asking this question. Actually, today is the first announcement that we have of the winter cohort, and Cassandra and Hilary is gonna help us to help with the information, and also we try to send all the emails we have, but honestly, we are new. We need your support to just spread the word, help us, please. That is gonna be a lot of help. Sometimes in a new position, you don't know everyone, so it's hard to know. If we, for some reason, don't have your email, and please feel free to contact the people you know that this is the perfect information that somebody needs. Please help us to spread the word. And we will send the email in this week very soon, and for all the details, and they can sign in for be part of this community of learning that we are so excited. Most of the time we learn more that we can when we have the opportunity to connect that with when you tell us what you need. So please just help us to spread the word. Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about what happens in the cohort and what kinds of things that you've covered in the past? Is this a completely new set of information, or is this something similar that you did with the previous cohort? Just so people have an idea of what sort of resources they'd be gaining and what kinds of things that you'd be talking about, so they know which staff might be the best fit for that.
Yeah, so these Connect and Learns are really focused for anyone who is working directly with the parent leaderships or with parent groups. From our first cohort, we really focused on communication. That was our main topic. You know, we did effective communication, how to do communication with group settings online or in person. And this next one, we're really focusing on the leadership of those who are organizing these groups, because they're all leaders. And so we really want to focus on their leadership as well as they're supporting parents. So that's what we're gearing our next cohort to be. So it's more of a buildup from the first one, but anyone can join. Doesn't mean that you had to be in the first one in order to join this next one.
Any other questions that folks have about any of the work, the awesome work that is happening?
Brenda and Amanda, do you want to let the group know about whether or not to share out the link that they are looking at for the draft guidebook yet? Because I know it's kind of still pretty draft.
Yeah, just, you know, it is a preview for you all to just kind of take a peek at and look, but not something to be shared yet, because it's not ready yet to be 100% sure, but just as a preview to you all, we'll go ahead and send a read-only link as soon as we can.
Just going to hold this really awkward pause to see if any questions bubble up. I'm like holding my hand really. Here's the awkward pause. Cool. Thank you so much, Brenda and Amanda, for coming to the meeting and sharing that resource, all the resources with us. And we are happy to help share out that information about the cohorts so that Hub folks can join in on those. And we'll make sure it goes out to all the hubs so we can work together on that. Next. Carmen, any thoughts on what's going to happen next?
What time were Remy, Harriet, and Carrie expecting to be here?
That's a really great question. I think about maybe 1:30 because I think we thought things might take a little bit longer.
Let me check in with them.
Okay, just slight technical difficulties that were happening right now.
Well, we could take a hot drink break and everybody could get a coffee or refill their water
love
while
it.
we adjust the technical difficulty.
And take a look at the toolkit as well, since we have that
Yeah.
amazing resource right now.
Absolutely.
Oh, there's Remy right there. Hello, Remy.
Hi.
Hello, everyone.
And Carrie. Fantastic. So we are ready. If you're ready, Remy and Carrie, we are ready for you.
Wonderful. It sounds like we got here just in time.
You sure did.
Wonderful. Well, I guess we'll just kick things off. Carrie and I have some short, just a cute little slide deck to share, which this dang.
While you share, Remy, I don't know if everyone knows me. So I'm Carrie McCann. I'm from the BUILD initiative. BUILD supports states in early childhood systems building. Oregon is one of our 8 partner states where we have a close-in relationship to do thought partnership and consultation on early childhood systems building. So I spend most of my time with your Early Learning Council and your Raise Up Oregon agency implementation coordination team about really thinking about the system building work that's happening across the 5 state agencies that are involved in early childhood. And we're part of the Raise Up Oregon editing and update process to get you to a 2nd edition. So that's the hat I wear today to join you all. So it's great to be with you. And I think Remy and Harriet were with you in August when I missed that meeting to talk to you about the 2nd edition and get your initial input then. So I'm happy to be able to join you today.
Yeah, and hopefully everyone remembers me, and if you don't, that's totally fine. I am just a cog in the government machine. I am Remy. I am the Early Learning Council Administrator technically. I also coordinate the Raise Up Oregon team. And that's why we're here today, is to just give a quick check-in on where we are in the process, and then also talk about how everyone here is going to be helping us. We're so grateful to have the Early Learning Hubs help us on this project. And here I will start sharing my screen. Cool. Yay. Excellent. Okay, well, Raise Up Oregon 2nd edition community engagement. Very fun. Here we go. So just a quick overview on what we're going to talk about today. Just wanted to do a quick check-in on where we are in the 2nd edition revision process, because we came to y'all in August, we got your feedback. You weren't the only groups that we sought feedback from, and we have finally compiled all of that, and we are going to be releasing a draft version of the 2nd edition. We'll talk about that in a second, but we really wanted to focus the conversation today on what's next with our work with the Early Learning Hubs, because y'all are going to be helping us out doing this community engagement around the Raise Up Oregon 2nd edition. And it's going to be hopefully not a huge project. We'll talk about the details. And I'm very excited to see what y'all are going to say about it. And then we'll finish with some next steps.
So this is our overall timeline. I think we talked just at our last meeting around trying to get to a 2nd edition, that this is our aspirational deadline and that we really want to do the process well. So if we don't get to step 10 by August and we need to move that to the fall, that we're willing to do that, because I think it's really important to us that these next couple of steps that happen in the new year are well done and people have the time and support to do them. So you were part of, in August, our process of analyzing lots of information that was gathered in plans and reports, and already talking to community, any state agency, Early Learning Hub who had done community engagement in the last couple of years. We reviewed already what families and communities had shared. We compiled that information. You gave us feedback in August. Some other groups gave us feedback as well. And we presented that information to the council at their October retreat to really think about the themes and the direction that they would like the 2nd edition to take, because we really were looking high level at, do the goals still make sense? Do our principles need to be updated? Because it has been 5 years and how we think about this work has changed and been very responsive to the situations that Oregon's been faced with in the last 5 years, as well as our ongoing understanding of like what our families and young children want and need. So we took all of that information in the strategic direction that the council offered in October. And as Remy said, we're in step 5 right now of November, December of drafting of the plan based on that direction, and it will become available this Thursday publicly to everyone when we share it for the December council meeting. And that what we'd like you to do is help us with the community engagement review and feedback on the draft, that based on what families and communities had already been sharing, how it's reflected in the plan of what the 5 state agencies are committing to for the direction of what's the role of state system building and contributing to early childhood in the state of Oregon. Did we get it right? Is there things that really resonate with them? Are there things that don't resonate with them? Are there things that are missing? And that we will take that feedback to update the plan, and then we will look to get to a final version. And as I said, it's aspirational to get to it by August. We're intending to strive for that deadline, but if the community engagement takes a little bit longer, but it's really meaningful work, then we are happy to delay and move the timeline so it's responsive to the feedback that we're receiving.
Excellent. So Carrie hinted on this, and also let me add, if you have any questions, feel free to unmute, interrupt, drop it in the chat, and we'll be able to answer. So if anyone has any questions so far, please, once again, feel free to unmute. But Carrie actually just talked a little bit about one of the goals of this community engagement. And one of the things that we really like, this is something that I'm personally on a mission in government to change, is coordination of community engagement across not just programs and teams within the early learning division, but then also with our cross-agency partners. So as Carrie mentioned, we did a bunch of community engagement review, and it is wild how every single community engagement report from every single agency that we reviewed looks the same. It just, you could put Oregon Health Authority on a Department of Human Services community engagement report, and it wouldn't make a difference. It like they all look the same, which is like kind of sobering to read when you actually put them all next to each other and look at it all. And one of the things that we're worried about is we're not coming back to families to ask them what's wrong again. Like, families have told not just the early learning division, but every one of our partner agencies that what's going on multiple times. They've said the same thing multiple times, and families and providers don't see separate government agencies. They just see government, and they just see us asking the same questions over and over again and not really doing anything. So what we're trying to do with this community engagement is we listened finally and we heard the feedback, and now we're creating a to-do list. So we had this original to-do list of, here, let me grab my emergency copy of Raise Up Oregon, the original edition. I've always got one at arm's reach. We had our original to-do list 2019 to 2023. And now we're looking at this to-do list, listening to what the families have to say, and creating some new action items, like retooling some old action items and putting out a revised to-do list for government agencies in order to build programs that support families with young children. And so that's essentially what this second edition is. It's a strategic plan. Like, what is a strategic plan? Try to talk to your friends about a strategic plan. It doesn't, no one knows. It's a to-do list. It's an action item list. It's great. So we're coming back to families right now, and we're showing them this to-do list and being like, hey, do you like it? Like, does this sound good? We heard you say all of these things. This is how we're translating it into actual action. And we want to know if you think we got it right. We want to know if there's anything missing, like what's wrong, you know, all the good questions. So it's basically coming back with a half-baked product and asking if we're getting it right so far. So that's one of the goals, is that families and professionals understand that piece, that we're not just here to be like, what's wrong with your life? Once again, like, we're here to be, this is the thing that we're coming up with in order to hopefully fix your problem in the future. Do you think we're okay about it? So that, just that message is just one of the goals. Secondly, recording feedback on the second edition of Raise Up Oregon. And then also finally, would love, Carrie and I want to meet with all of you afterward and talk about your sessions and the feedback that you collected so that we can truly understand, because there's a lot of context that's missing from written documents, and Carrie and I really want to get together with y'all and talk about it. And will there be something from the government that shows what was done after the first version? Actually, Molly, funny you should ask. We wrote a progress report that was technically only 2019 to 2020. So we don't necessarily have the most recent version of a progress report, but we are like, that's something that's on our list right now. I'm sorry that it's kind of a non-answer. We kind of have something that shows what was done after the first version. It's the progress report of halfway through, and we're talking about how we continue to show everything that has been done, because honestly, a lot has been done from the Raise Up Oregon original strategic plan, and it's pretty wild. I will drop the progress report link into the chat that was published in January 21. But as to something that's a little bit more revised than that, TBD, and very, very good question, Molly. Any additional questions before we move on to the next slide?
Remy, I was just thinking, even if it's not a published, I don't know what hoops you have to go through, but something to say, like
talking points. Yeah,
even talking points, because otherwise
we can we can do that, Molly. That's a really great point, and that's also something that we've talked about in our meetings as well. So it's great to I think it's also just something that would make families feel like we're actually doing something, because when government changes things, I don't know, you kind of don't really think about it. So okay.
So Kelly, I see your question. So I think given the funding that you've been provided by the Early Learning Division, they didn't want to expect multiple sessions by county. So the request was 2 sessions, 2 sessions for the region. I think if you have reflections on the funding and flexibility, or if you want to do more than 2, we're happy to be thought partners with you about whether the resources would allow you to do that, and where we could be support to you if you wanted to do more than 2 per the region, but that's not the expectation. We're trying to also spread the burden across all the hubs. So Remy and I'll talk about that. I think part of the promise was that not every session would review the entire plan, because that would probably be more than a 90-minute session. So once we work with you on who do you want to target and what is best for your hub to collect information from who on, how that might help if you know that some of your partners in other hubs are providing feedback. So you can continue to give us feedback on both what you were compensated to do and what you have the capacity to do, and where we could be the best partners to extend that capacity.
So you lost me on everything. So
okay. Right. Carmen's put the expectation of a minimum of 2 sessions, with 1 being a family. So you're looking at your entire region and organizing 2 sessions for the funding that you've been provided. If you wanted to do more than that, then we would be happy to be thought partners with you, but that's not the expectation for the funding you've been given.
I'm listening to you, but I just want to give you a little feedback, because I think that's why you're talking to us. I think that if you are getting only a little bit of feedback on a specific topic from a spattering of people across the state, you're really not going to have feedback. My DHS, in my regions, have different DHS offices, and they have really different understandings and perspectives on the state level involvement in early childhood. Let alone housing and community services. They're very different across the different counties. And if I ask one of my counties a specific question, it's not going to reflect the whole region. And yet it's going to go into your report and your research as coming from the Eastern Oregon region, and it won't be true. I mean, it won't be accurate. I guess I have a concern with the process, and I don't know. I guess I don't have a choice. I will have to trust you to gather what it is you're going to gather. And maybe you've already decided what the outcome is, and we're just doing the legwork. I'm not sure.
No, I don't think so. I think there's just a limitation on resources. And so I think your reflection, I will definitely take it back to the planning team. We meet every Thursday. So both, I'll take that reflection back as about the concern, as well as on Friday, we're meeting with the other 4 state agencies about their role in helping with community engagement. So I think you're offering food for thought to Remy and I about how do we collect that kind of information from you, from the form, because we were going to ask you for your preferences, but I hear you that that might not be sufficient way for you to give us that kind of feedback, because I'm thinking each region might have slightly different feedback from us about what's most important to hear, as well as what's the role of the other 4 state agencies to also collect community engagement.
And I think this is a really good example of my opinion and my perspective on this, that I assume that I'm in the minority with this opinion. So it's, I just want to be careful when we're asking people for feedback on this Raise Up Oregon system, because in my region, this has been a huge effort, and it's been something that's been in front of us and talked about for the past 5 years. It's really important to us, and it's really empowered us in a part of the state that is not very involved or doesn't feel very connected or included in state government process. And so we are often in a reactive place. And so if you're asking us what our opinion is, either ask it or don't ask it. But if you're going to ask it, then let us tell you, let's gather as much information as we can and provide it back to you. And I'm not saying I have a ton of people, but I am saying people have opinions in this area because we've been working hard.
No, I really appreciate that, Kelly. And I think the spirit was to acknowledge the amount of funding you being given and to set a minimum. And so maybe the purpose of our, you'll see on our timeline that we wanted to offer office hours where if each hub or any hub wanted to talk to us, both in thought partnership around these kinds of issues, and then how do you really want to do this work for your region, we could explore what you're raising that might be in common across all the hubs and what's maybe unique to your hub, and then how can we be responsive and supportive to the process where we do want the feedback to be meaningful and we do want the feedback to happen. So but I also think we want to also acknowledge the amount of resources you've been given.
And I love the timeline. I don't want to be given 6 months to do this. Just, tell us to get in and get it done and send it back. Fine.
Right.
So this is Sue. Can I just ask a quick question, Kelly? I'm wondering, so do you have the capacity to do more than what's being asked, the 1 family and 1 additional? Because I think that's like the minimum that's being asked, right? That's not a maximum or
right. We wanted to, right.
Right. So do you have the capacity to do more than that? You're smiling.
So I'm smiling because no, I have zero capacity. So when this was sent out to us months ago, saying that this was coming, and I don't know what the investment is for other hubs, but the investment for my hub, what I was told early on was $10,000. And so at that point, I started looking into how we could contract this out and be really strategic and effective, because we thought that this feedback process was going to be really important. And so I have identified a small consultant group that's local to us that has a lot of experience doing this. And there's 3 people involved in that group, and I talked to them if they would be interested and have the capacity to hold 1 or 2 sessions, town hall type meetings in all 3 counties, and have a contract. It would include their travel, it would include their expenses, it would include their time. And they said they could do it. So do I have the capacity? No, but I did find somebody. So I want to do it right.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that, and also appreciate your creativity in what's capacity mean. It doesn't mean you and your small staff, but it means how do you multiply or maximize, leverage the use of those funds? So I appreciate you thinking outside the proverbial box. So, and I think that's a great example
And
for
I'll say
others.
one of my staff will be present at each one of those town halls, but they won't have to do the work of setting it up and doing the summaries and doing all the data collection but we'll be involved in making sure people are invited, and we'll make sure that one of us is in attendance.
Wow, that sounds like an awesome option, Kelly. Thanks for sharing that.
Mhm. And we can share with you when we learn what the other state agencies can commit to, what might else be happening, and also think about multiple strategies for input. So one of the things we were thinking about, just like how the Early Learning Division posts like rules for public comment, how to put the whole plan up. It's going to be publicly available the moment it is shared with the Early Learning Council for their December meeting, and invite a way for people to give comment on the plan too. So we can also share with you, there's the contributions you're making through this process for the $10,000 that was included in your contract, but here are other ways that people could give feedback. And then we also would like to hold a separate session with all of you about your feedback on what was written, but we wanted to keep that a separate conversation from what you're doing to help us solicit more input from the community.
Thanks for clarifying, Carrie. I really appreciate everyone's concern for making sure that a real variety of groups and representative citizens of our state have opportunity to give feedback on this and say whether the objectives and strategies will get the work done that they know needs to happen. And want to reiterate what Carrie just said, that it isn't only you all who are doing this engagement work. There are other agencies that are involved in it as well. So this is one component. And I think for sure, Carrie, I like that plan of bringing back to this group what the other engagements look like, so that can really help inform where we take our work through the hubs. And Erin, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yes, so I would like to maybe have a conversation here or somewhere else about how this outreach to families and partners aligns with what we're already doing with the RSA, because we're a rural area, so we have a lot of communities. We don't have very many people. So we're already doing some big events in January, February to get the data we need for the RSA. We can't do more events. And if we hold a town hall or a meeting for an hour and a half and say, people come give us your feedback, like 2 people will show up, because parents don't want to come to something like that. They need childcare. Like we can't provide childcare. We have so many communities right now. We are in the middle of snow days because it snowed. So that's another factor that we have to consider. And if we do it on virtual Zoom, we're only tapping to a small portion of families. We're not getting the families that are going to be most impacted by it. So I think it would be more advantageous for us to figure out how to blend into the things that we're already doing than to do another thing on top of it, because we don't have capacity. Our families don't have capacity. We're already tapping the capacity of our partners with the RSA meetings on top of the other meetings that we're already doing too. So I think it would be more helpful for us to talk about how do we blend it, as opposed to how do we do a whole nother thing.
I think that's great, Erin. I don't see any reason why it can't be blended. And I think that it would be good to have a conversation about what that blending could look like with Remy and Carrie, like as soon as possible, so that they can think about that as they're gathering the materials that we want to provide to help people with a facilitated conversation, so that that can be part of the development.
Yeah, and we would have to defer to your expertise about how to blend it. So one of the things Remy is going to share is what work is underway, but we wanted to have this conversation with you now about what's the toolkit and materials we're generating, so that we can make sure, like hearing Kelly's feedback of like what would actually be helpful to get to finalize. So we didn't want to finalize the materials and hand them out today and have them be wrong. So that's why we wanted to have today's conversation. So we would defer to you on how best to blend the conversations. Your ELD staff have shared with us your other toolkit. So where we can just align. This is a more simpler project than the others in terms of what you have to collect and hand into us. So so it will be a simpler toolkit, but we are looking at language and processes and things that you've already received, so that if we use similar language or align it, that it will make it easier for you to think about the blending of multiple conversations.
Shira, I see your hand up.
Yeah, if there is going to be a kind of a side conversation with Aaron and Carrie and Remy, I would love to be part of it because I think I share the same challenges. And then when you speak about the, virtual, like we have 5 counties that are quite far from each other. And like to get them all together in a town hall, I mean, it's theoretically, it sounds lovely, but the reality during winter time and the roads out there are pretty sketchy, that, we're not going to be able to bring people to a central place in person. So I would love to get in on that conversation and think about that with you. And I also second what Aaron is saying, like we have all of our family engagement activities planned out for those counties where we're recruiting for our parent leadership council, and we're asking questions for the RUO, and we're asking questions for the EXA. And so it's like layers upon layers. And like we were trying to keep our questions short and brief so that we could get more responses and more quality responses. And I just am worried if we layer on top of that, that's going to dilute some of the quality of the work that we've already invested.
So Remy, let's talk about next steps. And I think we'll take this feedback in to think about what's the information we're collecting from you as our next step, really help us with this conversation, and how do we have in January our office hours that Remy was going to offer, where for those of you that want to problem solve around the unique features of your region, and how you're thinking about either the blending or the prioritization of where you're going to go to complement what else is going on to collect feedback, that we can do that. So where do we want to be responsive to each of you with your unique situations? And then Carmen, maybe I can explore with you, like what does everyone held in common that impacts our toolkits guidance in general?
Awesome. So yeah, why don't we, I'll start screen sharing again, and we can talk kind of more about what is actually in the toolkit, so you can actually like get an idea of what, because all of this conversation, I want you all to know that we are trying to make this as easy as possible for you, and all of this feedback is really helpful with that. And we truly want to make it a process that doesn't give you too much heartburn. And I'm totally hearing all of your concerns right now, and we can have further conversations on all of this for sure. Let's see. So I also want to point out this community engagement toolkit is a draft. We are not planning to finalize it, as Carrie said, until the beginning of next year, when we come to you on your January 10th meeting to talk about this again. And by then, I'm sure that the toolkit will look a lot different, especially just hearing what everyone has to say today. But we looked at your RSA toolkit and kind of modeled it after that. So it's much shorter. We've got the facilitator's guide, which kind of explains what's going on. And then, sorry, I'm trying to pull it up. Where's the window? Here we go. There's it's kind of just explains what's going on. And then there are a couple of different like planning the community engagement session, like what does that look like, step 1, step 2, and then some agenda templates for engagement with families and engagement with professional groups. And what those look like is just an agenda. Oh, these numberings, see, draft, these numberings are not correct. How did that happen? Just a suggestion on how to run through a meeting with a family or a provider group with some questions and talking points about what we've heard from families and providers so far, and this is how we are translating it. And then we get to pretty broad questions that I think can interlace with the RSA engagement very easily. And getting into some more specific questions based on the sector that you want to be specifically working in, which we'll talk about in a second. So once again, all very draft form. And I have, we'll be sending out these slides and all these links. You can view the toolkit and provide comment on the Google Drive that I just pulled up. And we would love to hear everything that you're saying, thinking. I mean, I've already been taking notes on this conversation, but feel free to dissect it with your thoughts. And Dorothy, do you have a question?
Yeah, and I apologize if I missed this, but are there other statewide community organizations, culturally specific organizations that are also doing this community engagement on behalf of Raise Up Oregon, or is it, I mean, I'm thinking about some of the constraints that we've expressed as early learning hubs, and the desire to blend as much as we can with what we're already doing with the regional system assessment work and other strategies that might already be happening for hubs. But I'm also curious if the engagement and feedback on Raise Up Oregon, like if there are other statewide organizations that can support some of that engagement, to hear from a broader group of parents that are connected to organizations. You know what I'm saying? Like, we're going to have some constraints as early learning hubs. I don't know what other organizations that can provide capacity at a statewide level to do this community engagement, if you have a toolkit developed and all of this stuff, like templates. So that's just my curiosity around making sure that we're really hearing deeply from across the state, from across populations across the state.
I mean, what's interesting to think about the answer to your question is actually the Early Learning Division so far is the only state agency that has committed its own dollars to do this community engagement process with you guys. That doesn't mean that our outreach, once the document comes public, that we won't have other strategies, but I think you're asking a very good question that I don't have a great response to. Sue and I have been talking about how do we use the Early Learning Council monthly meetings in 2023 to also invite people and use that structure for input for specific groups. And so I think part of our work between now and our January meeting back to you is to think more concretely. We were so focused on how do we prepare materials for you since the Early Learning Division was at least the one state agency that committed financial resources to this process of how do we support you in this part of the work. And then we do have some follow-up to think about what's our capacity and outreach to others and what the other state agencies can be prepared to do.
I'd also be curious what other state agencies are already doing outreach in the same time frame. I just know, like, regionally, actually next week I'm going to a meeting with my DHS folks on some quality, continuous quality improvement work that they're focused on doing. And they're going to be engaging families in our region around that. So again, I wonder about the outreach that might be happening in other state agencies and how to wrap some of this into that.
Yeah.
And once again, not the best answer to your question, Dorothy, but someone noticed my really terrible acronym in my name, RUACT, Raise Up Oregon Agency Implementation Coordination Team. You can actually blame Alyssa Chatterjee for that acronym for when she had my job back in the day. But the Raise Up Oregon team is comprised of policy and program managers from our partner agencies like Oregon Health Authority, Oregon Department of Human Services, both child welfare and self-sufficiency programs, Oregon Housing and Community Services, and then the Oregon Department of Education, as well as, of course, the Early Learning Division. I play kind of a nonpartisan role in that group, even though I am an Early Learning Division employee technically. But part of this work is working with the Raise Up Oregon team to do exactly what you're talking about, talk about where the community engagement is going on across our different organizations and try to plug in with each other. I can tell you right now that there is going to be a lot of major engagement coming out of the Oregon Health Authority, the Medicaid 1115 waiver, very technical term. Basically, Oregon Health Authority got a bunch of approval from the feds to do a lot of crazy stuff with Medicaid dollars, and they are going to be working very hard to implement it. So it's kind of between them, and then we are working with the Tribal Advisory Council as well to get the tribal perspective on this work. We're a pretty regular agenda item over there at this point, and working as Carrie kind of said, and not to highlight where we are in this process, but we haven't necessarily roadmapped out the details of the community engagement that we're doing. We just know we're going to be doing it between January and June, and that's kind of where we're at right now, is like, what are these next steps? We know who we need to loop in. We don't necessarily know how we're going to do it just yet, but that's something that we're working on currently. But thanks for asking. So bad answer for right now. Hopefully I'll have a better answer for you later. How about that?
Remy, can we go to next steps?
Sure, totally. Let me share my screen again. Sorry, I don't like it when screen share is on and people are trying to have a conversation. Okay, so we're back to my PowerPoint. So just a quick, here's the timeline really fast. That includes some of these next steps that we're talking about. Going through, looking at the toolkit, meeting a bunch in January. Carrie and I are going to be holding office hours, as Carrie has mentioned, to talk to you, receive feedback, be thought partners, answer any questions, et cetera, et cetera. And going through, this is like kind of the anticipated timeline at this point, January through March. Hopefully we're looking at these community engagement sessions being held and completed, and looking at April and May for the feedback to be submitted, and then talking to us about the feedback as well. And let me get to the next slide really fast, because this is the next step slide that Carrie wanted me to get to.
So I was thinking, Remy, that based on today's conversation, we might update your smart sheet. So our one definite next step for all of you was for you to provide us input on your preferences for the sector that you would like to have for the professionals. We want to cover, so how we think about sector work in Raise Up Oregon is kind of the spheres of health, which includes health, public health, and mental health. It includes human services, which is child welfare and self-sufficiency, housing, early care and education, and then your partners with K-12 education. So we wanted to collect a form where you could give us some preferences. So as we think about the kinds of questions you're raising with us today about both, you're worried about representation within your region. And of course, we were thinking about representation across the regions and how any one region isn't burdened with the whole draft plan and all the sectors, how you could be complementary to one another, as well as our other strategies that are going on. So I think based on what you gave us feedback, Remy, will want to update the form so you guys can also let us know if you have individual questions or opinions about your approach in your region, things that you've shared today, like Kelly saying, how do I think about this in multiple sessions, questions about it's winter time, am I thinking about this as virtual or am I thinking about this in person? Other questions about how I'm blending this with things that may be already being scheduled with a limited population. So I think there are some things that will change about that. But the one request will be where you can give us preferences and flag some things that's unique to your region that you want us to know about. The second thing is optional, that if you wanted to provide feedback to the draft community engagement toolkit, you can see what Remy has put together and give us feedback early in the new year so that we can bring a final version to you at the January meeting. But I think that will be optional. I already have ideas of things, given the kinds of questions that you asked us, of what would be helpful to, and how to edit the toolkits, but we didn't want to make that a requirement. That's really your option as we think about and review and make sure this aligns, so that as you think about blending opportunities, that that we make it as easy as possible with the materials we're providing.
Yeah, and I guess just like Carrie kind of touched on this, but I just wanted to emphasize we were coming into this project with the lens of like really trying to make this as like light of a burden as possible for each of you early learning hubs. And it's kind of sounding like it's translating to we're not hearing enough from each early learning hub region, because there's so much diversity within the different regions. So that's definitely the tension that I have noticed coming out of this conversation. But one of the reasons why we wanted to kind of divide and conquer by sector is because we know that each early learning hub has different strengths and different sectors that they work in. And we also didn't want to burden you with needing to get feedback on the entire plan. Go ahead and do it if you want. You know, the world is your oyster as far as getting feedback. We just wanted to set the minimum expectation, and you can exceed those expectations. You can blow them out of the water if you want. We would be eternally grateful, and I would be very impressed. But don't feel the need to impress us. And we can talk about how we can better tailor this toolkit to address all of the concerns that y'all have brought up here today. Really appreciate it. Yes, a small slice and disclaimer. Sorry, go ahead, Carrie.
Oh yeah, so you guys get to help define. So we're asking for your preferences. I think Remy's Smart Form give us your top 3 preferences of what you'd like, so that we can see, like, if everyone picked early care and ed, we would have to come back to you. So this will give you a way to give us your preferences, and then we would come back to you to confirm as we see what the mix is of who's interested in doing what in their region, that you will have an ability to do something you're interested in doing. And at the same time, Remy and I can keep track of who's doing what, and that we have the kind of coverage we wanted to have statewide.
So everyone can see that I pulled up the smart sheet, right? Okay, excellent, good. Well, besides that, it sounds like Carrie and I have a lot of tweaks and updates to make before we share some of this stuff with you. So I think that we can probably get it out by the end of the week. Carrie, Carrie and I are about to jump into another meeting where we will talk about what we're going to do about what you just told us. Once again, really appreciate the feedback. This has been really enlightening, and it's great to work with the early learning hubs and just understand the system more. So I'm really excited to see how this project ultimately ends up fleshing out, and excited to work with you guys. So
yeah.
So I just want to make one final comment from a council perspective. The council talks about U-Hubs all the time. And if you listen to our meetings, you know that you always come up no matter what the topic is. And we know that we're asking a lot of you to really provide leadership on getting input for this new edition of Raise Up Oregon, which we greatly appreciate, because we look at you as the on-the-ground people who really know what's going on in the state. Obviously, you've been doing community engagement from your beginnings. I mean, that's kind of in your DNA. So you've done sector planning, and now they're regional assessments. And so we know this isn't new to you, and hopefully, just as you may have a preference on which sectors you'd like to do a professional engagement with, hopefully you already know your families well enough in different counties or regions that you're going to have a pretty good idea of what parts of Raise Up Oregon are they going to be most interested in or most affected by. So I'm hoping that you already have some of the background you need to narrow down what parts of Raise Up Oregon are you going to want to really get input from your families on. And maybe that's either naive or unrealistic, but I hope there's some accuracy in that assumption. But on behalf of the council, I want to thank you all for being key partners in this effort.
And if I can add one more council perspective, once again, our Raise Up Oregon 2nd edition initial draft is going to be made public on Thursday. We're really excited to introduce it for public comment, and I'm hoping that it'll be really clear when you look at it where the input from the early learning hubs came through. So I hope you check it out.
Can I ask another question or express another?
Of course, Dorothy. Yeah.
I'm just wondering about also our governing councils or advisory councils being places. I mean, like I understand that the two audiences that were mentioned in the engagement are families and professionals, which are super important. I think we talked about all of that, but I'm also wondering about the other spaces that we facilitate in terms of advisory bodies at county levels or governance councils, and if there's maybe it's a tweak in what is already developed in the toolkit, but an opportunity to get feedback about Raise Up Oregon from those entities as well. Because I think that they also, you know, there are parents we are connected with, but then there are parents that our county partners are connected with even more deeply that that may have important input. And I can imagine looking ahead to, you know, my council meetings through the end of June 2023 and my advisory council meetings and seeing them potentially as spaces to do some engagement sessions. If I'm thoughtful, you know, reaching out to those folks now. So I don't know if there might be some flexibility to build some pieces into the toolkit around like outside of it. I think you get what I'm saying, and I'll just stop.
Dorothy,
stop saying those words.
That's exactly the spirit of the community engagement that we're trying to build right now. And that's really appreciated. I mean, to be honest, like that's just something I didn't really even think of because I'm not super familiar with the early learning hub system. So that is exactly the spirit. And like, we can definitely, that's a very great and easy tweak to make into this toolkit to include stuff like that.
Yeah, and let's make the smart sheet where you can start to let us know if you intend and want to do that. And then we can follow up with you about when that might be scheduled and when we might receive that input from you. So if it's on a slightly different timeline, we know what to expect because we said to you, our timeline is aspirational and we want to make sure that we're supporting this process and receive the input. So we would also like input directly from the hubs and how you engage your advisory or governance boards in that process. We could explore with you. We just didn't want to confuse that conversation with the community engagement activities that you're doing, but we do want to hear from the hubs. So how that involves your leadership and perspective on what you see written in the plan, as well as what conversations you want to have with your governance and advisory, we would invite that. So Remy will definitely think about how to include that in the tool as an optional.
Yeah, noted. And unless any final closing thoughts or questions, you've given us a lot of food for thought today. And obviously this won't be the first time you see us. Well, it hasn't been the first time. It will definitely not be the last time. It won't be the last time on community engagement. It's not even the first time on getting feedback from you on the draft plan. You know, you're going to get to know me and Carrie quite well by the end of this process, I would hope. And I did say this as soon as I said this to the Tribal Advisory Committee. I said that I would be pleased if we published this by the end of the year next year. So I'm already, you know, maybe I'm just ahead of myself, but hopefully we can get it published on timeline. But you know what? Timelines, construction of white supremacy, who cares? Yeah, Molly knows what I'm talking about. Cool. Okay, well, I guess Carrie and I will get out of your hair and go straight to our next Zoom meeting, which we have together.
Thank you, Remy and Carrie, so much for coming and hosting a discussion about this. Really appreciate that.
No, thank you for having the things. The gratefulness is on our side. Thank you for having us. We love taking up all of your important agenda time where you could be talking about actually well, maybe, I don't know, a strategic plan is serving families. I don't know. We appreciate it. We really appreciate y'all, and we'll definitely be back around here soon.
Great.
Cool. Bye, y'all.
Bye. Well, good news, everyone. That was the last agenda item. We get to have 21 extra minutes added to your day to do other things. Thank you so much for attending. Thanks so much for involving yourself in the discussions. I hope you have a healthy and happy rest of 2022. If I don't see you, and we'll see y'all next year. That sounds weird to say. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Thank you.
Hey.